UConn is the best program in college basketball. Why it's Alex Caraban's and Hassan Diarra's responsibility to keep it there.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A little housekeeping on my side. YouTube support has been amazing. Keep going. Subscribers are being added every day. Those same folks who are subscribing to the YouTube channel, please download the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. It's equally as important to me. It helps the Locked On UConn audience grow. So if you can do me two quick favors, first click that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen, and then head over to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button. This way you'll never miss a moment of Locked On UConn. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Listen, this statement, UConn is the best program in college basketball today. I'm wearing my UConn Runs college basketball Breaking t-shirt. You can find those on Breaking T. Use my promo code on my Twitter page if you can find it. If not, hit me up and I'll set you up. But look, these you know how these t-shirts work. This is what was said by Dan Hurley, so they print the t-shirt, and he's right. UConn has been running college basketball for the last 35 years, and we have the banners to show for it. But maintaining the best program in college basketball hasn't always been our strong suit. We've had incredible runs, consistent championship runs, but that year-to-year mentality is what I think Dan Hurley has brought to this program, that dedication to excellence. And is Alex Caraban and Hassan Diarra, and to a smaller extent, Samson Johnson's responsibility to keep UConn at the top. Those are the three top guys who are back from our back-to-back title. And if UConn is going to threepeat, those three are going to have to be, in particular with Hassan and Alex, are going to have to make UConn that much better. They're both going to have to make statistical jumps. They're both going to have to make leadership jumps to maintain UConn as the best program in college basketball once again. So we all know Alex's contributions as a leader, but I think what we've seen in some of the practices already and some of the insight we've gotten from Joe and others who were there is that he needs to be an impact player, not only just from the little things he does, but his scoring ability. He averaged about 13 points a game last year. I think he needs to pump those numbers up to 18 points for us to be truly elite. And that's a huge jump. So that means maybe we don't see Alex with the best efficiency numbers, but that's okay. If he's giving you 18 points and 7 rebounds a night, I think we're in really good shape. Leadership qualities, he's always going to be considered an IQ guy. No one gets nicknamed the brain center if they're not smart about where they're supposed to be, where they're putting other people. I think his work ethic is second to none. I think that trickles down, obviously. And if your best player is Alex Caraban, you are in great shape, because what he shows and what he kind of embodies of UConn is what it's like to be a Husky. You come here to win championships. He's done that. Check. You come here to be a part of a winning program. Check. And you check your ego at the door. Check, check. So all of those things could lead to a third national championship. So I really expect him to elevate his game even further, and how he grows will be crucial for UConn's continued success. But let's pivot to Hassan, because at the beginning of this offseason, I was even debating whether or not Hassan should start, because his role as a sixth man, as a guy coming off the bench, to be a facilitator, to be a guy who can elevate and inject some life into a team. You don't always get that when you start. Although something tells me that with the way Dan Hurley coaches, that won't be an issue for Hassan Diarra. So I think his defensive ability is what's going to kind of be ramped up. But I wouldn't be surprised at all. I made a prediction yesterday that a 12-point game, 12-point a season game to be an all Big East performer is kind of on the table for Hassan Diarra right now. It's his role for the taking, right? He's going to get as much rope as possible and try to stave off the freshmen and the transfers like Aiden that are going to be willing to want to be that combo guard to run the point. And without a 5-star recruit at the point guard like we had with Steph Castle last year, you could make a case that Haas is starting if Steph decides to go someplace else. So I think he steps in and kind of makes a name for himself. I think way too much is made of like his intangibles. This dude is a straight like driver of the basket. He's an old school Queens, New York. I'm gonna get to the hoop. I'm gonna get downhill. I'm gonna score on you. He's added his shooting ability has been elevated over the last couple years. Was kind of like a willing shooter. Okay, you make a couple here and there. But if you leave that dude open, he makes threes. And he's also made some really tough ones too, some clutch ones. My favorite, Hassan Diarra, is when, they've passed the ball around so much and he's the last open guy in the last couple of years where he takes a little dribble and shoots it and then gives you the little 3 symbol, ice water in the veins. That's probably my favorite picture of him when he makes a shot. So, also, just like Alex, his locker room influence is going to be huge, man. Like when you have a 5th-year senior who's been through it at other places, kind of knows what not to do, and mentor a guy like Ahmad, mentor a guy like Aiden, who even though he's been through it at St. Mary's, he doesn't know the UConn way, right? Mentor kids like a guy like Isaiah Abraham, Liam McNeely to a certain extent. Like these are Alex and Hassan are guys that if they talk, you're listening. So I wonder, though, sometimes the weight of expectations with this being a 3rd championship run and these guys knowing nothing but winning here, especially when you're talking about Alex and Haas, carrying that torch can be a big burden. But I think both players are not just maintaining a legacy of UConn, but also building upon it. So, that's the biggest thing for me is this is not just about winning a 3rd championship. It's about continuing that bridge to what will eventually be another crop of 4- and 5-star recruits. Because let's face it, guys, once these guys are done with UConn, they come back. They come back for practices. They come back for, if they're working out for NBA teams, then they just come back because it's part of their home. And, I think when you are as successful of a player as Haas and Alex have been at UConn, I mean, there's no place like home, right? You can leave. And think about the places that our guys have gone this year, like Donovan Clingan. Portland's been a perennial loser, has a pretty good culture. Memphis for Cam Spencer. Is he going to make the team? Is he a 2-way guy? Is he going to spend most of the time in the G League? That's a real crappy existence. Let's just face it. It's a grind and he'll excel in it because that's his mentality, but it's not going to be like it was when you were at UConn. Same thing with Tristan Newton. Steph probably is in the best position, right? He's at a team that is on the rise. He's got a superstar player a counterpart in Wembayami. And so, you're just never going to have the time that you had when you were at UConn and in college. So I think they're going to embrace the pressure because this is it, man. Whether they win a 3rd championship or not, Alex is going pro, and Haas is probably going to try to make it somewhere. I don't know if he's an NBA player. He certainly doesn't have the size for it, but he's got the heart. And I never put anything past an individual that has a dream. So if Hassan Diarra is dreaming to be an NBA player, God bless him. I hope he ends up getting that shot. And chances are, if he goes for a 3-peat, he's definitely going to get some looks just based off of the cachet of being the starting point guard for the 3-time national champion UConn Huskies. So let's discuss what the season is going to hold for Hassan and the rest of these teams. But I also want to talk about how this team is going to be good if Alex and Haas do what they're supposed to this year. But how elite, how solid will they be if coming up after this? I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking us up with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. That's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of summer. Official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. UConn fans, fall is approaching, and you know what that means? College football is back. And you guys know that college football is going to be a Friday thing for us. We're going to have football Fridays starting next week with our podcast contributors of the TNT podcast to get you all set for UConn football. And just in time, Home Field is launching the Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign, bringing you the ultimate gear to rep your Huskies all year long. So with Home Field, you get exclusive apparel sponsor of this podcast, and it's your go-to for the most comfortable, vintage-inspired collegiate apparel out there. I wear Home Field constantly, and with over 180 schools to choose from, they've got something for everyone. So even if you're a UConn alum or UConn fan, but let's say like my wife, you're a Tennessee fan and you want to wear a little bit of UT orange, we got that. We got you covered there too. So this fall, it's all about one thing: the 2024 Home Field Platinum Football Box. This isn't just any box. It's a VIP experience for you diehard fans. We're talking 3 brand new, never-before-seen items that you can't get anywhere else, designed to keep you looking fresh from the first kickoff to the final whistle. Plus, Platinum VIPs get even more: an exclusive hat or ringer tee, a VIP koozie, in the 2024 Platinum Pass. This pass is your ticket to 20% off and early access to all of your school's football drops all season. No more missing out because your favorite gear is sold out. These boxes drop August 9th, which is today. So you should be looking at them now. But heads up, they're super limited and they will sell out. So if you're serious about the Huskies, don't wait. I'll be rocking Home Field gear I've been rocking Home Field for a while now. I got the sweatshirt that I was wearing just the other day on the show. They're, super limited gear. So it's soft, it's stylish, it's perfect for those chilly game days. So head over to homefieldapparel.com, grab your 2024 Platinum Football Box, and get ready to show your UConn pride all season long. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. You're back on Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto. Let me get my tag up here in case you guys want to follow me on X. It's at Mark Zanetto CBB. Just did a Home Field tag promo. Guys, go get Home Field apparel gear. I know in the future we're going to have Home Field giveaways. We're going to have some potential promo codes for extra percentages off because you're a Locked On UConn listener. So maybe there's going to be some events on campus. We'll see. So there's a lot to love about Home Field. I've been a fan of theirs even before they started sponsoring Locked On Podcast Network. So check them out, and we'll go from there. So we talked about Alex and Haas, and maybe the keys to keeping us on top and running college football, as you can tell by my T-shirt. But who else? I think there's like three what ifs that we can address if UConn does these 3 things. They're going to have a threepeat. Okay, so these are all the things that people have talked to me about over the year, over the past season, even when we were winning and being so dominant. Everyone always has a negative spin on, even when your team is literally the most efficient offensive team of the last 25 years and a top 5 defensive team. So are there things to improve on? Sure. If you have the Dan Hurley mindset, there's always something to improve on, right? So let's talk about it. Conversationally, just so you guys know, when I hear you guys talk about we need to rebound better, we need to have guys who are more, boxing out and all that stuff, I guarantee you that Dan Hurley, who's as fundamentally sound as they come as a coach, the influence of Bob Hurley Sr., I'm sure they do rebounding drills. However, when in this era of college basketball, in particular with the way they run their offense, they allow their guards to take a lot of rebounds away from their bigs because they want to start fast break or opportunities with guys who can get the ball into their hands quicker. So it's why you saw Tristan Newton have 7 rebounds a game. It's why you saw Cam Spencer in some of his best games of the year. He was an offensive rebounding machine. And it's intuitive in the player. Like you can't rebounding sometimes isn't taught. It's an instinct, in my opinion. And I think most coaches would agree with that. But you can definitely learn how and where balls are being are coming off the basket and be better at being in position. So yes, there is still an aspect where if Samson Johnson, if Terrace Reed are double-digit rebounders, we're elite because they're getting a lot of offensive rebounds and putbacks. We're also elite because we're getting into our offense quicker and not allowing second chance points. If the other thing happens, which is our guys like Hassan, guys like Liam McNeely, guys like Alex Caraban, their rebound numbers jump up, then that just means that they're filling in for Tristan, Cam, and Steph Castle as the rebounding guards. So, maybe Jalen Stewart averages 6 or 7 rebounds a game because he's more of a wing. So I wouldn't worry about how we rebound guys, but that is one aspect. If we're an elite rebounding team, people aren't going to mess with us, and they're not going to, be able to handle what we can do from an offensive perspective. If Liam McNeely is the absolute real deal, if he can mirror even close to what Steph Castle did, which is on certain games, just completely take over and get 20, 25 points, or just be a menace on defense, be that Alex Caraban clone of being that kind of, trailing 3-point, just maven, just unbelievable from that trail position to knock down threes. That would be number 2, where we would go from, we're pretty good, we're a Final Four contender, we're definitely a top team in the nation, to you don't want to see UConn at all, especially in a one and done scenario. And the third thing is figure out, this is a Dan Hurley thing, figure out the rotation of all of this talent to a point where it's a well-run machine of 9 to 10 guys. I don't think he's going to play 11 dudes. Definitely not. But if he can figure out a 9 or 10 man rotation that is efficient, that is economical in the respect of you're not going to want to, completely shy away from playing certain guys who earn it, guys who are really kind of showing out. Early guys like Jaden Ross, Jalen Stewart, kind of building off of last season. I think you're going to see a ton of Ahmad Noel. I was super conservative with my projections in yesterday's show, but I'm also kind of doing that because I want people to see what I think this kid is going to be. And I listen, you can talk to parents all you want. I've talked to a few parents on this team of players. Not going to name names. You guys saw one with Ahmad's dad and Tashid. When Tashid tells me something about his kid, I listen, because my guy is pretty humble with, what he's accomplished as a coach and a player himself and his outright. And I mean, listen, who doesn't know that their kid is special when they get a scholarship at UConn to play basketball? And from everything that people are saying, he's really surprising folks, like with his jump shot, with his ability to play defense, his mentality. Like he's already like built like a 25-year-old adult. Like his physique is of a guy who's been lifting his whole life. So in a way, he didn't win the genetic Olympics in height, but almost everywhere else, my man is just like yoked. He looks like a football DB. And so that's what we're getting. We're getting that dog. We're getting that guy that's going to get after it. And I think that's the element, that Cam Spencer element, is in Ahmad. I think I've talked about Aiden being like a throwback of like Tristan and Cam. He may be that more Tristan that's got a laid back. I'm from Southern California, or sorry, it's just California, not Southern California. And just kind of like have that calming influence on the team. Same with Solo. Solo will get in your face a little bit, but I know he's a Baltimore kid, but he just seems so stoic. And so, like, I know it's probably not his personality, and I've heard great things about him through Ryan Gresh and the Feel Good Lab and everything like that. But these are guys who are they're unknowns right now, but they're not to us. And what I mean by that is, if those 3 or 4 things happen on top of Alex Caraban and Hassan Diarra leading the way, this team is going to be not just elite, but special. And it may start to mirror some of the things we did last year in the NCAA tournament. So, Locked On is sponsoring a Locked On College Football podcast. It's from Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On College Football. He is here for you to get you ready for college football season and discussions on the upcoming season, the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including the conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs. Was at 12 teams now. It's pretty cool. And more. Locked On College Football is available. Maybe UConn will be a part of that. Maybe we can get them up. This is my hope and dream for this show, guys, is that the UConn Huskies of football fame, the UConn football Huskies, can go into College Station, Maryland on August 31st and pull off an upset, so that my show becomes a hybrid football and basketball show. Because I may not love to talk about UConn football, but I sure as hell love to talk about UConn beating teams that they're not supposed to. And that's like a tradition of like no other, to quote Jim Nantz from the Masters. So definitely check out Locked On College Football. Maybe UConn will be featured at some point, and maybe I can get on that show and talk about it. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, there was a special interview by NBC Connecticut. I'm going to get the reporter's name. He had a picture with Jared Kotler. I can't think of it off the top of my head, partly because I don't live in Connecticut anymore, but I want to talk about how special that was watching Danny Hurley and Jim Calhoun together. What an amazing idea. And I thought kudos to NBC Connecticut. But we're going to talk about that and the takeaways I got from those two legends coming up after this. Hey, UConn fans, it's summer, and it's the dog days of summer, and there's nothing like catching a baseball game live. Wherever that may be, you could be a Yankees or Red Sox fan in the midst of an up and down season, or maybe you're cheering for the Mets or the Braves. Game Time has got you covered, no matter who you love. I've been using Game Time app, and I've snagged last-minute tickets, and let me tell you, it's been an absolute game changer, no pun intended. With Game Time, you can score killer deals on MLB tickets right now, right up until first pitch. And I love how you can see how the view from your seat before you buy, so that way there's no surprises. Plus, there's all-in pricing means no hidden fees at checkout, and what you see is what you pay. Just the other day, I found an amazing deal for a Mets game, and I almost threw up that I almost bought it. Just kidding. But picked my section with zone deals in Game Time, did the rest. If you're looking to catch a game before summer's out, this is the way to do it. Download the Game Time app, get an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Don't miss out. Get in the game with Game Time. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, and we're back on Locked On UConn. For the last segment of the day, I really wanted to talk about the interview. And let me find out I should have looked this up beforehand, so I apologize for wasting a little time here. But it was so cool to see, Coach Calhoun and Coach Hurley together. It really did. I sent it to my dad, and he lives in New York now, so he didn't get that. And it was one of those things where he was like, look, it really did show a softer side of Jim Calhoun that you didn't really get. Coach Hurley has been a little more, come forward a little bit more with his feelings. He comes across as being such a psycho, and I mean that in the nicest way, Dan. And I think people forget that he is really truly at the forefront of people realizing that they have to have their mental health checked on a regular basis. Like, there is nothing wrong with showing emotions, but you have to do it in a constructive way. And I truly believe that even though he may lose it a bunch and go to that dark side sometimes with the officials, I think he does it in a constructive way on the court. Like, he may get a tech here and there. He may even, chew out a Seton Hall fan or a St. John's guy in a weird red jacket, or, some of those crackpots out in Omaha. But, it's just, I think it comes from a good place. It's because he feels like he's always the underdog. And I don't necessarily know if that's healthy, but I think it works for him. So it works for us, Coach. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But let's go back to the beginning. This is the reason why I even thought about signing on and doing this show with you guys is because of Jim Calhoun and his 88, 89, 90 Huskies. And even when I was a baby, when I was like 5 years old, my dad has always been a big UConn fan. And so, but when Calhoun got there, he followed a lot of Boston sports. So he knew Calhoun from the Northeastern days. And, UConn was at a basketball crossroads, and there were talks about leaving the Big East and if the future was uncertain. But Calhoun, in his kind of straightforward and no nonsense way, said something that would set the course for decades to come, that it's doable to create this basketball. I don't think he would have thought that this is where UConn would be, but he saw the potential, and he is the architect. He is by far does not get the credit that he deserves nationally. He's a Hall of Famer, so he does. He gets the accolades. Don't get me wrong. People will say, "Well, you're faking. You're making up fake controversies again to pump up UConn." Probably, but that's okay. That's what we do. He saw potential where others saw challenges, and his belief laid the groundwork for what has become essentially the ultimate dynasty. And now here we are, 6 national championships, all behind me, behind my hats, behind my crappy shelf there. And we're in the conversation, as we just talked about. If you ever said to me I'd be doing a UConn podcast where I would be talking about UConn going for a three-peat, I would have told you were crazy. But I'd also told you that's pretty awesome. So in this interview, Calhoun really kind of reminisced about those early days and the passion of UConn fans, the Husky mania, and the belief that this program could be something special. And he speaks of, God rest his soul, Bobby Knight, who told him, go to a school that cares. And this is no disrespect to what I'm about to say, because I can tell you right now of a school in Tennessee that cares, that it has a direction in it. Bobby Knight told Jim Calhoun to go to a school that doesn't have a, like South Florida, like there's no direction to it. Like, and like, for example, a fan base that cares in the mid-major world, East Tennessee State. Okay. So it's rare, but I think what Bobby Knight is telling him is like, eventually sometimes that program, the caring of that program kind of subsides. In a place like UConn, it almost could never, because look at this is I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to sound terrible about Connecticut as a whole, but there hasn't, at the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, you had Hartford, you had the Whalers and everything that went with it, but it's all the pro sports around us that made things go. So to have something that's our own in the men's basketball program and eventually the women's basketball program, this fan base was so hungry and passionate and ready to support a winning program. It's something for ourselves, not something that's like, well, I live in Connecticut and I'm a Yankee fan. Well, I lived in Connecticut and I'm a Patriots fan. Great, but you're not like a Boston guy. You're not a New York City guy. So, but that was so cool to listen to him talk about that, and that's also chronicled in my friend Matt Edwards' Dream Season podcast. So check that out when you can. But let's shift to Dan. He's carried the torch forward. He humbly refers to himself as a tenant in the house that Calhoun built. I thought that was a cool line in this interview. And he recalls his days as a player in the 90s facing against UConn when he was at Seton Hall, and recognized the powerhouse that UConn was becoming under Calhoun. And today, Hurley has the privilege and the challenge of continuing that legacy. And I thought that was a really nice little synergy. And I'm still blanking on our friend's, the reporter's name. And I feel awful because I know he's a friend of Jared Kotler. And that picture of Jared and him when he was a kid was pretty cool. Let's pause and check that out really quick. Out there. I think it's Kevin, right? Kevin Nathan, right? God, and here's the thing: I grew up in Connecticut, and I'm a lot older probably than Jared, but Kevin Nathan's probably about 10 years older than me, and I remember him growing up. So as a high school kid, so phenomenal job, Kevin. Hopefully I'll tag you in this, and you can make fun of me for not not remembering your name. I'll blame it on my mini stroke a few years back. So, but listen, the two of them speaking candidly and talking about was beautiful, and I also listened to Jared and Kevin's interview a while back, talking about how, Kevin had a relationship with Coach Calhoun and hadn't really had the same kind of relationship with Hurley, but the thought of putting them together, I think it was his and maybe a producer, but man, I thought that was such a cool dynamic, like to bridge that gap. So the similarities that these guys have together is great. Hurley and Calhoun discussed the art of coaching, and that's really what kind of is the most fascinating part is, Calhoun talks about the psychological aspects of coaching and how important it is to let players know how you have their back. And even when you're pushing them to their limits, and like, it's almost like it's this crazy love-hate relationship, like that only truly a parent knows, right? I think the only correlation is when that your kid is underachieving, you want them, the best similarity to that is coaching, right? And Hurley echoed that, talked about trying to help them grow as individuals. They probably both did that with their kids and for Coach Calhoun, his grandkids. They both speak candidly about, their own challenges, more so Danny with his struggles like we talked about with mental health and finding balance and strengthen his faith. And it's made him a much better coach and a person. And, a particularly touching moment in the interview is when Hurley reflects on the influence of his father, Hall of Fame high school coach, and how growing up in that environment really shaped his approach to coaching. He talked about being a fly on the wall, absorbing everything about the leadership and relentless pursuit of mastery in the craft of coaching. It's clear that for Hurley, coaching is not just a job. And also, we can take it back to something that happened most recently that affected all of us, which is his flirtation with the NBA. This interview kind of really shows that he's not chasing paychecks. He is about continuing his legacy, and that started long before he stepped onto the sidelines at UConn. And it's more about the name on his back, right? The Hurley name is synonymous with college basketball. It's synonymous with basketball coaching in general. So just a really cool segment for Kevin, and to have that in his interview resume is awesome. So to kind of wrap it up, I'm just really grateful that I have the opportunity to talk about UConn hoops, talk about what's coming. UConn football is on the rise. The UConn women are poised to go for an unprecedented 12th title. There's so much good positive energy from the glory days of the 90s through the 2000s, and now for those of us who are captivated by this recent men's success. And what did Coach Hurley say at a dinner this offseason, that Gino Auriemma has a bad year, he's in the Final Four. So I think we're going to expect some fireworks from Gino coming back this year. So with Paige and in the group. So stay tuned for more on all of that. I just want to say thank you for making Locked On UConn your first listen. And for your second listen, like we talked about, make sure you go check out Spencer McLaughlin with Locked On College Football. Like we said, maybe UConn football will be on that show someday. They make a couple upsets this year. They got 3 or 4 big-time Power 5 games where they can make some hay. So check that out. You can find it in the description, so you don't need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Locked On College Football, your team every day. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Grateful for your listening and your subscribing and downloading. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure that toughness meter is always rising, and as always, go Huskies.